Good afternoon and welcome. Sorry about that. My collar was sticking up, still is a bit. Good afternoon and welcome. My name is Michele Jutrisa and I'm an independent demonstrator with Stamping Up here in New South Wales, Australia. So thank you very much for joining us today. We're going to have a play with again the Jolly Holly. Let me just move my camera down so you can see. We're going to have another play today with the Jolly Holly stamp set and dies. As I said, I still want to continue playing with this so I can see ways we can use these dies. Just let me bring this in and show you. So with this, it's a bundle, so you get the stamp set, you get an embossing folder, and you get a set of dies. Now, there are more dies than just this one particular one here, but this is the die that works with this particular stamp set, and what it does, it cuts out these hollies. I hope you can see that. As you can see, I've been playing around with using blends, and you do get other dies as well to cut out a frame, to cut out the word joy, and to also cut out some of these lovely little elements here as well. So we're going to continue playing, and I'm going to show you another idea that I've come up with today, and let's see how this works out. So let me pop the chat up so I can see who's on and who's not, and I'm going to bring out my bits and pieces that I'll be using. So today the cardstock, the colours in the cardstocks I'm using is Crumb Cake, Basic White and Early Espresso. So they're the colours, which aren't traditionally Christmas, but you can use these in Christmas cards as well. Hello, Deborah. Thank you for joining. So first off, what I'm going to do is I've got a piece of crumb cake here, which I've cut in a quarter sheet. This piece here is 10.5 by 14.9, and I'm going to emboss that with the embossing folder and the die cuts. So the die cuts, if you haven't seen them before, this is what we would call the top, where you can see Stamping Up. So you have sort of like on the inside, that side's debossed. This one here is embossed. So we're going to pop this die here. Now let me just make sure it fits on. It should just click onto that. Have I got it on the right spot? Should have, yes. It'll just click right in to those holes there. Now this is what we call a hybrid. So it cuts as well as embosses. And with this one here, we need to use our large embossing machine. I'm going to pop my cardstock on here. I'm actually going to do this. Normally what I would tend to do is put my cardstock on this side and then close the folder over the top of it with the Stamping Up up the top. But this time around, I'm actually going to do it with this one the opposite side. So I'm popping my cardstock down onto my die cut, and I've got that all in position there. It fits into that top piece nicely, and I'm just going to layer this as evenly as I possibly can around and then fold that over. Now I've got my large cut and emboss machine, and I have got my number 1 plate and number 4 plate. Always put your fold going in first, and then I'm going to pop my number 4 plate on top. Now when I put this through, I am going to run it through twice, just the fact that I want to make sure that that has embossed well. I'm not so much worried about the cutting, it is the embossing. Okay, so let's pop this out and have a look and see what we have. So we'll remove our embossing plates. And here's our folder. And when we pull this out, we're just going to very gently pop these dies out. Now this die does not cut, so then each one of these pieces are in that completely cut away. It's a partial die cut, so there are little areas where they're still cut and you can lift these up. So what I'm going to do next is I want to colour this up a bit. Whoops. Now, as you saw before, I had one that I'd done in my blends using on white cardstock, but this time I'm going to use my watercolour pencils, and I have chosen 2 colours here. I just want to give this a little bit of a sharpen because I have been playing with it. I do like to keep these with a nice sharp head on them. And we're just going to go over, now I've got 2 colours here in my watercolour pencils. I've got garden green and I've got granny apple green. So what I'm going to do, hello Joe, how are you? I'm going to colour over just the leaf areas, just very gently, because I don't want to push down on that embossing. I still want to keep that embossing shape. And I'm just going to go over this quite lightly and quickly. So I'm just going over the leaves. I'll bring this up in a minute so you can see. And I'm just going over it in a slightly circular motion. Trying to keep into that outline of that leaf. There we go, just like that. Now, after I've done it with the one colour, I'm going to come back in with my granny apple green, and this time I'm just going to go over the top, but I'm not doing a circular motion this time. This time I'm just sort of doing like an up and down scribble, just adding that bright green, that granny apple green over the top. Now, I have been having a little bit of a play, and let me just pull in for you what I've already been playing with. So this is what I've been playing with so far, and I like to try different things when it comes to blending out my watercolour pencil. What brand? Oh, look, this one is one I probably have had 20-odd years, and it was a Smiggle. I don't know whether you remember Smiggle. Smiggle was a little shop that came out. I think it was a Chinese type little funny shop 20-odd years ago. But it's just an electric battery run pencil sharpener, Joe. Yeah, I've just had it for a long time. It was a shop a little bit like Nikki. I think it's called Nikki. But it's, yeah, it was just very Asian shop. You know, everything was sort of all little pussycats and big eyes, and it was in Sydney a long, long time ago, and it would have to be 20 years ago because I think my boys were very, very little. And, yeah, they had one in purple and I had to have it. But anyway, so I've been trying to colour this with different things. So I have used the blender pen. You do have to be careful because if you use a blender pen, because it is a type of like a water-based, you can peel your paper if you go over it too many times. I have done this with, which is my preference in a lot of ways, the Stampin' Up! Blends colour lifter. I find that sort of blends the colour really well. And I've got one here which has just got a little bit of shimmer on it. I don't know whether you can see that. And I've used the Winker Stella on that one just to have a bit of a look, see how they're going to come out. I think at the moment I'm going to go to my blend. Now, I have already started, there it is, and I've gone over this one here already with all of the garden greens. So now I just have to go over the top with my granny apple green. I'll just quickly go over the top of all of these. I was wanting to have this all done before here, but I just sort of got carried away with playing a bit with other things. So let's just go over the top of this, not pushing down too hard because I don't want to push down that indentation. Now, of course, you don't have to blend these out if you don't want to blend them out. Okay, they are watercolor pencils. They're the Stampin' Up ones. But if you're quite happy with the way you've coloured it in and you don't want to blend your colour, you don't have to do that. It's just I tend to like having my colour blended out. Now, also in saying that too, we are going to cut some of this away. So you don't have to colour all of these leaves as well. The reason why I am is because I'm not sure yet which ones I'm cutting away and which ones I'm not. So I sort of figure, well, if I colour them all, then they're all done. Now, by putting the Granny Apple Green over the top, all I'm doing really is just brightening up that garden green a little bit. Just adding a bit of colour. And it adds a little bit of definition too. Just going over very quickly. I mean, you don't need to, I'm only using 2 colours, so you don't need to sort of put too much detail in there, but just following that curve, really, that line down through the centre and just adding a bit of depth of colour. I'm not even taking that granny green right to the edge or to the tip, the bottom tip of each petal. It's really just from the centre up. Now I am going to use the colour lifter to blend. I may come back and do a bit of Winker Stella afterwards, after I've put my card together, but we'll see how it all looks, because really I've got the idea in my head. Played around more with this, more so than how the card is going to look. So we're just going to play all this by ear. I think I have got all of those done. So I'm now just going to come in and I'm going to use my bullet tip and just very quickly, and now this will dry. So at the moment I'm sort of just blending this out a little bit. It will dry out. For some reason this is just shows up a lot better on white, of course, what I'm doing. But at the moment I'm just looking like I'm just adding moisture to my card, but it will dry. And it will just blend all that out nicely, we hope. No, it will. Usually when I'm using colour lifter and watercolour, I usually lay a lot of watercolour pencil down. But just for the fact that I don't really want to press too hard on the embossing. I'm not going over it too hard. So I hope you've all had a good week. I'm feeling a lot better than what I was last week, which is good. Okay, just trying to see where I've been, where I haven't. As I said before, if you don't want to go over the top of this and blend it in with anything, you don't really have to if you don't want to. I find using the colour lifter is a lot softer than using the blending pens. Blending pens can be a little bit harsh because it is more water-based and it can make the paper peel, whereas the alcohol colour lifter is alcohol, so it's a lot softer on your paper. Still blends everything in quite nicely. Said I'm not being too overly fussy. Has anyone played with this set as yet? Still not a huge amount out there to show. Okay, we're almost all done. And that's it done. Now, like with anything, I've just got a bit of scratch paper over here, and I'm just going to run my nib on there just to make sure there's no colour. And that is pretty much drying as we're going. Now, the only other thing we've got is the berries, and I've been playing around with all sorts of things. I think what I'm going to do is colour these in with a cherry cobbler. I have taken the antique pearls and I've coloured them in with the alcohol markers in Poppy Parade. That looks good. You do have to go over it a couple of times to make sure the colour actually stays on there. But you've only really got a small, there's a small, a medium and the large. The medium is a bit too big. The small is probably around about the right size, but these are all varying in sizes. So I sort of figured that colouring them in with the watercolour pencil, again, just go very lightly because they are a dome and I'm finding that they are pushing in a little bit. But just wanting to go over these, and it might be even these that I might do with over the top with the Winker Stella. But I just want to put a little bit of colour on each one of these. Sort of want a rustic, old world, antique-y look to this. I'm not necessarily wanting something bright and modern because of the colours that I'm using. And now again, I'm just going to go over these a little bit with the they're not real bright, but then that's also too because I'm using my base colour is the crumb cake. Okay. Might just put a bit of colour on that one just in case. We don't think it's going to end up on my card, but okay. You need one which makes very fine ones. I'm not quite sure, Joe, what you're saying there. That hybrid is on my wish list. I admire your play with it last week. Thank you. Thanks, Joe. So now we've got that. I'm going to pop that to one side and I'm going to go on to the next part of my card. So I've got my card base here. I've got, which is my standard card base. So whether you're using A4 or Imperial, it's half a sheet. So if this is in metric, so it is 10.5 by 29.9, scored at 14.9. I have got a piece of early espresso at 10 by 14.4, piece of basic white. This is for my card insert, and that is 9.7 by 14.1. So I go down half a centimetre and then 3 millimetres. So I'm going to pop that also to one side. I've got another piece of crumb cake here, but I've also pulled out the frames from the Beautiful Motifs bundle, and I just want to cut out the frames. So I'm going to bring my large cut and emboss machine in again. This time I need plates 1, 2, and the 2 3s. So let me just grab all of those. So there's 1 and 2. And then we have the 2 3s. Pop that on the bottom. And then I've got a piece of cherry cobbler. I can't tell you what size it is, I'm sorry, because it's just a little bit bigger than my frames, as in the length, because it's just a spare piece I had lying around. But I'll give you a measurement in a second. And let me just run this through. Now this will cut out 2 frames. I only need one of those 2. So the other one I can put aside. Fine tips. Okay. Thanks, Joe. Okay, so I've cut this piece of cardstock would have been about 10 centimetres by about 14.5. So we'll cut those frames for you. So let me just pop those away. So I'll take a pick tool. Just helps me poke these out a little bit. Of course, you can get the brush tool that goes on with this, with the foam mat, but I find this works really well for me. And just very gently poke them out. You don't want to push them so hard you're leaving an indentation on your cardstock, but I just want that large frame. And let's grab this one here, which we've coloured. So my idea for this card is I want to cut this down, and this is the whole thing. And last week I was saying you could use that particular piece because it is the same size as that, and just mount that up directly onto there or trim it down a little bit. But I really want to find a way that I can trim them down a bit more. So I want to frame this, but I don't want all the outside pieces. So the way I've come up with here is what I'm going to do is just pop all of these up a little bit, because the whole idea of these is you can put a dimensional underneath them to give you a 3-dimensional look card, which is what I'm going to try to get the effect of today. But I just want to lift all of these up just a bit, and I'm going to pop my frame underneath. So I want this particular one here, this nice big holly leaf there. So either that one or this one down here, or we could use both of them. Let's just have a bit of a play. So you do need to play with this idea a little bit, because you do need to sort of work out, okay, where am I going to have my card? Now, that's actually quite a good one there, and that could be the bottom of my card, and then all of those like that. So that one there is going to pop over. So this is going to be like a frame. It's going to frame the pieces out. You haven't seen these frames before. If you have a look in the annual catalogue, it's in the beautiful gallery. There's 2 bundles, 2 stamp sets and dies, and this is the one of the die sets that comes with the beautiful motifs. So this particular stamp set. There is another stamp set that goes with this, which is all florals, but this one here just has these large die cut floral pieces and the frames. So, and then all these stamps. So I just wanted to play with the frames. And as I said, with the frames, you get 2 frames. So you have this centerpiece here, which is what's come out of the middle. And then you also have a second frame. So if you wanted to even do this card, but do it with a smaller frame, for example. So that's using the large frame. So if you want to do this and just use a smaller frame, you could work with just that. But I want to work with the bigger frame. So you'll see what I'm going to be doing, because we're going to be cutting some of all this extra space around the outside. We're going to cut that away. So, but I wanted for this one, use this big frame. And I'm using this as just giving me an idea of where everything's going to go, because I am going to put maybe some more of these bits, pull them out. So for the moment, what I'm going to do is work out where I want my frame to be positioned on this. And I've got a pencil here. And all I'm going to do is trace around the outside edge. Now, you may want to not trace on some of those leaf areas we've just coloured. I know I'm going to be cutting some of these away, so I'm drawing on some of them. But I've got here a big leaf, which is only joined by a very small piece there. So just be very, very careful where you're deciding to cut away, because you don't want to cut away and then find you've got you're going to lose a whole leaf out of your design. So you do really sort of want to play and look. I'm only doing this so quickly because I have already had a look at this. Now, what I do know, this leaf here, if I cut that away, I'm going to have a big hole here. So I can move this down a little bit, which is going to give me a new cutting line, which is then going to, if that leaf falls out, which it will in a minute, it's going to be hidden by my frame there. Now you'll see that in a moment. So I'm going to redraw my line up here. But you do want to just be very aware of what you're doing. You may want to, like if I want to pop this leaf here out, there's a little tip of it just hanging there. I may not want to cut that little tip. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to leave that in there, grab my scissors, and I'm going to cut this with my scissors. I'm not going to use a trimmer or anything like that, because I do want to have control of where I'm cutting. Now, you could glue all this down. The pencil line is just giving me a bit of an idea of where I'm going. And I know I want to cut right across here. I could take this frame off and then cut, which actually I might do. So you can see where my pencil lines are there. Now, don't want to lose that bit, but I want to get rid of that bit of pencil there, I think. It's probably going to be covered up anyway. But now this is the corner I said if I'm not careful, I'm going to lose this whole corner. Won't matter so much because it's going to be, I won't be using that, it'll all be under, but I don't want a bit of a leaf hanging out. Just got to be very aware where you're cutting before you cut, basically. You can see it's only really hanging on by a thread there. I'm going to go all the way up here, but I don't want to cut through this because I might want to pop that out. And as I said, you'll see what I'm talking about when I get to putting this all together. Now, this is where I'm going to lose this leaf here because my cut line is here, but my leaf, its cut line finishes down here. So as soon as I cut through this, you watch and see what happens. I'm not cutting through that leaf, but I am going to lose. And I'm going to just go through there for the moment. So I'm only cutting up to that line. But see, I've just lost that hole. And that's what I'm saying. You've got to be very careful where your frame is going to be. So I'm hoping I'm making sense. Now that one there, I'm going to cut right through that one. Just for the fact that it's got half a leaf cut off there anyway. So here I've got some parts of my leaves hanging out, as on the, I don't know whether you can see that, on that edge there. I've got part of my leaf hanging out here, and I'm just going to remove some of that pencil mark there, and I'll show you why when I put all this together. Now, I probably shouldn't have really put my pencil over the top of that. I'm going to go back in and just very lightly colour that in my green, garden green, and my granny apple green there again. Because this time, when I take my frame, now this is the one I decided I wanted in the bottom corner. I'm going to have that leaf and that leaf sticking out. Now I can come back and trim some of this up. Now I've got this piece hanging out. Am I going to lift it up over the frame? No, I'm not going to be able to. So I'm going to be able to cut that piece off. So I'm going to leave that there and cut that off in a minute. This one here, I kept the shaping of that. I'm going to lose it underneath my frame so that can stay there. Now this one up here, this is one I was thinking, will I lose that? No, I'm going to keep it. So I want to be able to play with this. Let's get rid of that bit of pencil there. And lift some of these out over my frame. That one there, can I lift that over my frame? So it's a little bit of fiddling. Just working out whether that frame is going to sit nice and straight, and no, it's not, because I want to cover up that hole. I've still got that bit there if I need to, there it is there, to glue it in. I want that piece to come out. As I said, this is the fiddly bit. It's just playing with all of this, getting this frame to sit in where I want it to sit. But you've got to be very careful because this piece here is hanging on by a thread. Now, that piece there is stopping me from moving my frame, and it's going to be in the road, and I'm just going to pull that off. It was just stopping me from being there, and it's just the way I've just sort of torn that off, it almost just continues the look. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is just grab my glue. Now this is all in my head basically, so haven't made one like this. Is my first time making this one, so if I seem to be a little bit all over the place in my directions, it's just because I'm thinking as I'm working. I'm just putting a bit of glue on that corner. I could have cut that away underneath, remove that whole corner, but I don't know whether you can see, but I've just got the tiniest little cut right there, and I would have had a hole there, and I don't want that hole. So it's easier just to glue that piece down. I'm just going to pop a little bit of glue there and glue that piece down. This bit here is a bit hanging by a thread, and I think I'm going to keep it because, again, I can just see a little bit of colour coming through there, and I know it seems a bit silly just to have that on, and every card you make is going to be a bit different, but I just think I just want to keep that in there a bit. But I am going to pop a bit of glue along there. Let's push that back in. Once you're happy with everything, where everything is glued, you can come back in and then just trim this all up. So I just want to cut this a little bit closer there and along here. Now that one wasn't going to get popped. This one here, don't think I've glued that down, so I could haven't glued any of that. So let's try to pop that through. Just very gently pull it through to that side. And then I'm just going to pop a little bit of glue in there. So it's really just plain. Now these parts here I've decided I don't want. So we can trim that off, and we can trim that one off. So excuse me 1 second. Sorry about that. Okay. So I want to make sure that piece is popped out. So this is going to be the bottom of my card. And that's going to go like that. So all of that can go into the rubbish. And that's what I'm left with. Just got a little bit here. I just trim back a little bit more. Okay then, so here's our card front. Let's have a look and see how that's going to look. Yep, I'm happy with that. Thanks, Joe. Sometimes it's hard to get your thoughts into words. So it's and plus I'm a doing person. It's like I don't learn by reading something. I learn by doing it. And I show people by doing it. Now, again, with this, I'm only wanting to put glue really just in that area where the frames are. I'm not really wanting to put glue in other spots, like in the center. And that's mainly because I'm still going to pop up some of this with dimensionals. And there was something else I was going to do, and I can't do it now because I've just glued that down, but that's okay because it was all just a thought. We'll see what happens. So my next idea, I did have an idea of putting some ribbon on this, but I usually like to tuck my ribbon in underneath there, but as I said, I've glued that down. But let me have a look, see if we can do still anything. I don't like, myself personally, and that's my own personal, I don't like having raw edges in my ribbon. So I might just leave that out for the moment. But if I hadn't have glued this down, what I could have done is taken my ribbon across and then tucked it in underneath and adhered that down. That's good, Joe. We've got to have quite a few of us doing people. Hello, Colleen. How are you? Hello, Leslie. That's okay. You can watch the replay. Okay. So our sentiment is going to be the next thing. And I was thinking of putting the sentiment onto a piece of white. I don't want to have it too big. Let's just stamp this and see how it looks, because I do want to lift some of this up, but I'm not going to lift that up until I've stamped my sentiment. Now, I'm thinking at the moment to do my sentiment in early espresso. If it doesn't work in that colour, we will just re-stamp it again in another colour. Let's just move all this rubbish out of the road. I've got stuff everywhere. I always work in a mess. And we're just going to tap this up. Now, I do need a foam mat underneath. And I'm going to stamp this towards the middle and towards the bottom, because I do want to see if I can make this quite small. And I'm using the sentiment Bright and Happy Christmas Wishes, and that is also in, as I said, the early espresso, because with the photopolymer stamp it's always good to use a foam mat, though I sometimes find with the sentiments, if they're just fine lines like this, you really don't need to as much. I'm just going to pop this in the other way and use that edge, because I've actually stamped that really straight, which is good for me. Now, I'm using my measurements on my paper trimmer here just to help me, because I've used a long enough piece. So I'm lining this up at 1.8 mil. I'll cut it there. I would like it to be finer if I can. Let's have a look. It's probably about the finest I'm going to get that. I might be able to take it a little bit finer. But to do that, I'm going to need a Post-it note, so I can use that as a handle. I'm going to pop that underneath, and I'm going to take it to 1.7. I'm going to take it to 1.6, see if I can cut it that fine. I'm only taking a mil off, but I tend to like my sentiments to be thinner than wider. It's all personal preference. And again, I want to be able to pop that up to there. So that's going to look good. And I'm going to use I want trim there and trim it there. So just using my pencil to give me a mark there. So I'm taking this to the end of frame to end of frame. Lining that right up there and giving that a trim. And that's going to sit nicely across there like that. Okay, so I'm going to pop a little bit of glue here because it's going to be sitting on the flat, so I'm not popping this up on dimensionals, I don't think, or will I? Just going to think about that. No, I am going to pop it on the flat, so I'm just going to pop a little bit of glue right across there. Just lift that up. I want this down as far as I can, but it's in the bottom third. So you don't want to take your sentiments down so low it looks like it's going to be falling off the page. Yeah, you could fussy cut it across the top and have it straight across the bottom, but sometimes I like to have that band sort of look. And I wanted this to go from edge to edge, so I really wanted that that effect. But if you were only just wanting to use just that section, just where the words are, yes, I probably definitely would actually fussy cut that. But again, that's just all personal preference to what everybody likes. So white with crumb cake lightly blended on the edges to take the harshness. Yeah, you could do that. There's lots of things that you could do. I wanted to have a little bit of a difference because the other thing that we could have done too is added a little bit of that underneath it. But no, that's fine. And the other thing I want to do is add some dimensionals. So, because we do want to lift some of this up. So I am going to pop a dimensional under there, and we will take the top off that off. Whoops. And add another dimensional. Under this leaf here. Want another one underneath this one. Luckily, these leaves are big enough to add the larger dimensionals. You probably might want, if you're going to add them under these smaller ones, you probably want to bring out the smaller dimensionals, the minis. But at the moment, I'm just going through and adding these under the big ones. If you're doing something with a darker background at the back, go your black dimensionals. So I'm just working my way around, just finding all the ones that I want to lift. You may not want to lift all of them. You might just want to lift a few. I think I pretty much want to lift a lot of them. I don't know how many as yet I am going to lift. That one there, I'm just going to... So I'm just working out which ones I've lifted, which ones I haven't. I know I'm spinning this around a lot because I'm just sort of, this one here I'm leaving down, that one there I've lifted that one, and I think I will lift this one here. You want to try to get these in as far back as you possibly can, so then it's not showing. Put one underneath there. I'm just taking the covers off the backs off these dimensionals before I'm putting them under, so then it's harder to get them out. Pop one underneath that one. You can use your take a pick tool just to very gently lift those up. That one's got one under, that one's got one under. This one hasn't. Going to have to give my floor a good vacuum after I've finished this. Got dimensional cover backings everywhere here. So let's just lift that one up. Okay, now that one's got one underneath it. That one's got one underneath it. That one hasn't, but that one needs a mini. Now, what that is also doing, I'm just noticing too, I mean, if I put a bit of glue underneath here, that would have held a few of these down. They are sort of, because I'm lifting these, the leaves up, the back of it is lifting up with them. But I'm not going to be too worried about that. I think it still gives you that three-dimensional look without having to do anything else. If it wasn't embossing the flowers and just cutting, you could get your bone folder and give each of these a shape, but you don't want to do that because they've already got some shape on it. But there's that, and I might just pop a little bit of Stella on these little berries, just not a lot, just a bit, just to give them a little bit of a sheen. And now I've just got to do the inside of my card. Now, I did have an idea because I was going to put ribbon on here of putting ribbon on this, but don't think that's going to work with the fact that I don't have any ribbon. So this is probably going to be a little bit plainer, or what I can do, so let's pop that on there. I have got these, which we were playing with before. Okay, so these are the ones I was practicing with. Now let me just lean over and grab something. I've got a glass plate. Now I'm working on a glass plate here, but because this is tempered glass, I don't want to put my craft knife anywhere near it. This is a piece of glass out of a picture frame, and I've just put some tape around it because you can use your craft knife, and I find it a lot easier cutting on glass. But if you cut on your tempered glass, it will scratch. This piece of glass here is at least 30 years old, and I've got no scratches on it at all, and I used to cut all my titles out. Now, what I want to do is I'm going to use this one here because, no, I'm not, because I'm going to use this one. And I'm just going to use my craft knife just to cut out in between these pieces. Now, it's the same as using a craft knife to using your pair of scissors. What you want to do is you move your paper, you pretty much keep your knife still. I'm having to move it a little bit because some of this is pre-cut, so it's not cutting as easy. But it does work really well when you're cutting out a lot of, doing a lot of fussy cutting, because you can use it exactly the same way as you use your scissors, where you keep your scissors still and you just move your paper, and your paper slips on the glass and your blade slips on the glass. Now, it is such small little cuts, you can cut it with your scissors, but I just find my blade sometimes works a lot easier. And if you use a self-healing mat, the thing you have to be careful of is your blade can get stuck in the self-healing mat. Now, I just need to find my pencils again because I want to colour those berries. These I've already coloured, and I've got that. I'm going to pop that on the inside there. So sometimes having these practice pieces can work out handy, because when you want that extra little piece, you can use that. The other thing I could have done too is stamped the holly image from the stamp set, coloured it and adhered it in here as well. But I think what I want to do is just pop that work out where I want to go. Yeah, that's not too bad in that position. So let's just pop a little bit of glue. I'm not putting dimensionals on underneath this because I don't necessarily want it to be lifted. And of course, you could put a bit of ribbon or something underneath that. But for what I'm doing today, I think that is enough. So there we go. There's the inside. You can stamp sentiment in there if you wanted to. Excuse me. We need a little bug stamp to peek out from the leaves. Yes, we do sometimes, Joe. But there's my card. Now you can, if you wanted to, add a few little bit more bling to that, but I really, for me, I mean, I'm not a real overly blingy person, but I've added a little bit of that Winker Stella to my berries, so when you move it around, they do have that little bit of a sparkle. Did I add my Winker Stella on the inside? No, so let's do that now. And of course, if you wanted to, you could, because this part in here we've got highlighted, we could add a little bit more Winker Stella to this particular one here. If you wanted, you could splatter it a bit more around. I'm not colouring in the whole leaf, I'm just colouring in a portion of it. Just giving that one particular holly leaf there a little bit extra of that lovely, beautiful glitter from Winker Stella. So there you go. There's another card. I hope you've enjoyed watching that. My aim is, when I get a new stamp set, is to try to make at least 5 cards, 5 different cards out of it. And with this one here, I'm trying to work out different ways that we can use this card. So a little bit more fiddly, but I think effective-wise it looks quite good. And it's still got all the design from the embossing folder there without cutting all of those holly leaves away and putting them on all individually. So and then bringing in the frame from the Beautiful Motifs bundle. So thank you very much for joining me today. I hope you've enjoyed that. Have a lovely weekend. I know I'm going to. We've got something very exciting happening tomorrow, which is going to be fun, and doing with some of my children and their partners. So I'm really looking forward to that. One more sleep. We do the sleep countdowns, even though it's not my kids. My husband and I do the sleep countdowns each night. So we're down to one more sleep till tomorrow. So hope you have a wonderful weekend and take care, and we'll see you next Friday. Thank you for joining me. Bye for now.